She didn't cry. She didn't storm off.
She didn't post a vague story on Instagram and let the internet fill in the blanks. She walked into that press conference, looked directly into the cameras, and said something that made every journalist in that room forget to breathe. And what's wild is that nobody saw it coming, not the tournament officials, not the WTA, not even the fans who had been following her every step of the way. One moment she was just another player navigating the chaos of a reshuffled draw. The next, she had just fired the most calculated, devastating statement women's tennis had heard in years. But here's what nobody's talking about. What happened in that press conference room in Berlin wasn't just a reaction. It was the conclusion of something that had been building for months, quietly, painfully, piece by piece, like a fuse being lit in slow motion. And to understand why Alex Eala did what she did, you have to go back not to the draw, not to the withdrawals, not even to Berlin. You have to go back to a moment where a 21-year-old girl from Quezon City first realized that the system she was playing inside was never designed to protect her. 6 players withdrew from the Berlin Open.
6.
Amanda Anisimova, Mira Andreeva, the freshly crowned French Open champion who needed rest before Wimbledon, Victoria Mboko, the explosive Canadian teenager who had just partnered with Serena Williams at Queen's Club, gone, knee injury.
Belinda Bencic.
Jasmine Paolini.
Sarah Errani.
One after another, the names disappeared from the draw sheet, and with each withdrawal, tournament officials scrambled behind closed doors to rebuild what had become an almost completely different tournament. The chaos was real. But here's the thing about chaos, it doesn't hit everyone equally. When the dust settled and the revised draw was released late Sunday evening, most players adjusted, found new opponents, moved on. Coco Gauff was elevated to the 5th seed, handed a first-round bye, no questions asked. Diana Schneider was promoted into a seeded position. Lucky losers and alternates were upgraded with the kind of efficiency that comes from a system that knows exactly who it wants to protect.
And Alex Eala?
She looked at the revised draw sheet, and something shifted behind her eyes.
Not anger. Not yet. Something colder.
Something that comes from pattern recognition. From seeing the same thing happen one too many times and finally being able to name it. Because this wasn't just about a draw reshuffle.
She had been here before.
Actually, let's rewind even further. Because what Eala has been quietly enduring this season reads less like a sports story and more like a test. The kind of test designed not to be passed. First came the fitness concerns advisory before Birmingham. A formal flag raised against her, suggesting she wasn't fit to compete.
She was fit. She competed. She won.
Then came the $50,000 fine. Then participation fees that felt less like standard procedure and more like financial pressure applied specifically, strategically, in her direction. Then, and this one particularly stings, she was excluded from the elite player development camp. A camp designed, at least in theory, to nurture the future of women's tennis. She was not invited. A player ranked inside the top 35 in the world, a grasscourt title already on her resume this season, not invited. She signed the waiver when they told her she wasn't fit to play.
She paid the fines. She kept winning.
She kept smiling. She kept saying Laban, the Filipino word for fight, and the world mostly moved on because she never made it about her.
Until Berlin.
Until Sunday evening when she reviewed that revised draw and discovered that while other players were being handed protections and accommodations in response to the scheduling chaos, she was being told she would receive none of it. Her match schedule subject to last-minute changes.
Her practice court access uncertain. Her warm-up conditions unstable.
Everything that other players were being shielded from, she was being left exposed to. And maybe in isolation, that's manageable. Athletes deal with inconveniences. Draws get messy, logistics fall apart, these things happen.
But isolated?
This was not isolated. This was the latest chapter in a story that had already had too many chapters exactly like it. Here's where the story takes a turn that nobody expected. Because Alex Eala could have done what she had always done. She could have taken the hit quietly, adjusted, channeled the frustration into her first-round match against Donna Vekic and let the tennis speak. That's what she'd always done before. That's what the system had come to rely on her doing. But something was different this time. Something had changed. Maybe it was the accumulation. Maybe it was Birmingham. Maybe it was sitting in a locker room after winning a grasscourt title and still being treated like someone who needed to prove she belonged. Or maybe, and this is the part that really gets you, maybe it was the fans. The Filipino community in Berlin had shown up for her. Actually shown up, crossed oceans, painted flags on their cheeks, filled the stands with a noise that doesn't exist anywhere else in tennis. And when you have people who believe in you that completely, people who see themselves in you, people for whom your presence in that draw is not just entertainment but actual representation, when you have that, Staying quiet stops feeling like discipline and starts feeling like betrayal. So she walked into that press conference room on June 14th, and she didn't make a scene. That's what's so striking when you watch it back. She wasn't emotional in the way that people expected or hoped she would be, the kind of emotional that's easy to dismiss, easy to reframe as drama or instability.
She was precise. Controlled.
Like someone who had spent the entire night organizing every word into exactly the right order, because she knew that the moment she spoke, it would be permanent.
She stepped to the podium.
The room was already full, journalists from across Europe and Asia expecting standard pre-tournament content, draw analysis, weather talk, opponent scouting reports. What they got instead was something that made several of them look up from their phones and not look back down. She said she had been informed that unlike other players in the field, she would not receive the same accommodations. During the draw reshuffle period, she listed them out, calmly, specifically match scheduling, practice court access, warm-up conditions.
She didn't editorialize.
She didn't accuse anyone by name. She simply stated the facts and then asked one question so plainly that it landed heavier than any shout ever could. She said she wanted to know why.
The room went still.
A tournament official moved toward the podium, and she raised one hand not aggressively, not dramatically, just enough to signal that she was not done. And then she said something that stopped being about tennis. She said she had played by the rules.
She had paid her fines.
She had signed waivers when the WTA told her she wasn't fit to play. She had smiled and waved and said Laban while the establishment made her life difficult.
But she was done being quiet.
She wasn't asking for special treatment. She was asking for fair treatment. The same treatment every other player in that draw was receiving. And if the tournament couldn't provide it, she wanted the world to know why. Then she turned directly to the cameras, not to the officials, not to the journalists, directly to the lens, and she said something to the Filipino community in Germany who had welcomed her like one of their own. She said to everyone who had ever been told they don't belong, that they don't deserve the same opportunities as others. I see you.
I am you. And I will not stop fighting. She stepped back.
Said that was all she had to say. And walked away from the podium in complete silence. The clip was online within minutes. Within an hour, it was everywhere. Eala Fights Back hit #1 trending in the Philippines, Germany, the United Kingdom, the United States, and Australia simultaneously, 5 countries. One moment, one player who had simply decided that enough was enough. The responses came fast and from places nobody expected. Coco Gauff, freshly elevated to the 5th seed, the player who had arguably benefited most from the draw reshuffle, was asked about it directly in her own press conference. Her answer was 4 sentences and felt like a verdict. She said she hadn't spoken to Alex about it, but she knew her. She wasn't a complainer. If she was speaking up, something was wrong.
And she supported her.
Venus Williams posted. 3 lines, no hashtags, no fanfare, just the weight of someone who had fought the same kinds of battles and recognized what fighting them actually looks like. She wrote that when a player speaks out about unequal treatment, we should listen, and that Alex Eala had earned the right to be heard.
And then Billie Jean King, the founder.
The woman whose entire mission was to create a space where women in tennis could use their voices without being punished for it. She posted that the WTA was founded to give players a voice, and that Alex Eala was using hers.
Not disrespect. Not drama.
That's what the organization was built for. The tournament director, Marcus Zock, gave the diplomatic response. Reviewing her concerns. Committed to fair conditions. Will address any issues directly with her team. It was the kind of statement that says everything and nothing simultaneously. When Eala was informed of his response, her answer was 4 words that hit differently than any paragraph ever could. She said she didn't need a review.
She needed action.
Fair treatment shouldn't require a review.
It should be automatic.
And then the part that everybody knew was coming, the part that the internet wanted desperately to see: she had to play tennis.
Because press conferences end.
Statements trend and fade.
Hashtags peak and cool.
But on June 15th, the morning after she changed the conversation in women's tennis, Alex Eala had to walk onto a court at Rotweiss Tennis Club and face Donna Vekic. Let that sink in for a second. After everything, the fine, the fees, the exclusion, the advisory, the Berlin decision, the press conference, the global eruption that followed, she had to go play tennis.
Not just any opponent either.
Donna Vekic, who entered Queen's Club as a lucky loser and left as the champion, the kind of momentum that turns a good player into a dangerous one, the kind of form that makes even top 10 opponents nervous.
They had played before.
A split sets battle at the ASB Classic earlier in the year, Eala eventually prevailing in 3.
But that was then.
Vekic right now was a completely different animal. Before her match, A reporter caught Aya in the corridor and asked how she was feeling after everything. She thought for exactly 1 second and said she had said what she needed to say. Now it was time to play. Everything else was noise. And that line, "everything else is noise," reveals more about who Alex Eala actually is than any headline ever written about her. Because this is a player who, at 21 years old, has already developed something that takes most athletes a decade to find: the ability to compartmentalize not as avoidance, but as power. She didn't suppress what happened. She expressed it, fully, publicly, on camera, in front of the entire tennis world. And then she put it down and walked toward the court. Because the other thing nobody talks about is what's riding on Berlin beyond the controversy. Aya is ranked 33rd in the world. Wimbledon seeding cutoffs hover right around that number. A strong run in Berlin doesn't just add points, it could confirm her as a seed at one of the most prestigious events in tennis. An early exit in a tournament she wasn't supposed to be distracted by could push her out entirely. The stakes are not abstract. They are specific and they are immediate, and she's carrying them into a match against a streaking champion the day after delivering the most consequential statement of her career. And beyond the ranking,
Beyond Wimbledon,
there is something larger happening here that you feel even if you can't quite name it. Alex Eala is from the Philippines. A country that has produced exceptional athletes across dozens of sports. A country that understands what it means to fight from a position where the infrastructure is against you, where the resources are unequal, where showing up itself is already an act of defiance. Tennis has never been kind to players from developing tennis nations. The pathways, the coaching networks, the development programs, the wildcards, the invitations. They flow most naturally toward players from countries that already have tennis infrastructure, already have representation, already have someone inside the room making the call. When Aya speaks about people who have been told they don't belong, she isn't speaking metaphorically. She is speaking from a lived specific reality that connects her to millions of people who have watched the doors open for others and wondered, quietly, whether they'll ever open for them too. That's why the Filipino reaction to her press conference felt different from standard fan enthusiasm. It wasn't just pride. It was recognition. The feeling of watching someone say out loud the thing you've been feeling privately for years, and watching them say it without flinching. She is not the first athlete to speak out against institutional inequality. She will not be the last. But there is something about the precision of her moment, the calm voice, the raised hand, the camera turn, the complete absence of self-pity that feels like it will be remembered when everything else about this Berlin Open is long forgotten. Here's the part that circles back to the beginning. Remember the question that opened all of this? Why didn't she cry? Why didn't she storm off? Because she'd already decided something before she walked into that room. She had decided that she wasn't going to give anyone the visual they expected, the emotional player who couldn't handle the pressure, the outsider who cracked under the weight of the system. She was going to give them something they couldn't edit, couldn't reframe, couldn't dismiss. She was going to give them the truth, spoken clearly on record, with her full name attached to it. And then she was going to go play tennis. Win or lose in Berlin. Seed or no seed at Wimbledon. The press conference is already permanent. The clip already exists. The words are already in the record. She said she was not asking for special treatment. She was asking for fair treatment. And for millions of people watching, that sentence didn't just describe her situation. It described theirs. That's what makes this moment bigger than a draw reshuffle. Bigger than 6 withdrawals and a reshuffled bracket. Bigger even than the match that followed. Alex Eala, at 21 years old from Quezon City, stood in front of the tennis world and refused to be made smaller. And whatever happens next on that court, whatever the ranking points say, whatever the seedings show, that refusal is already the win that nobody can take back.